A random memory. I had just turned 40, and so had my wife. I was doing very well, both of us were. She in private practice, me at Cardin and Cherry, working with Disney, doing earnest movies. And I wondered, was I going to write Know What I Mean the rest of my adult life? And did I really want to go to Hollywood? Because I'd been there, and I didn't like it. I mean, it was a theme park, and it was a swell theme park, but I didn't want to live there. MTV had offered me a job, Lauren Correo at MTV, to do MTV had just realized that they were a radio station, and when a song came on that you didn't like, you would change the station, so they needed to do long form. They needed a series. And of course, they wanted to do comedy. And I went out there and met with Lauren Correo a couple of times. And then she asked me to lunch. And in this really fancy restaurant in LA, she said, Daniel, we want to do comedy. We've talked to these guys in Canada, Kids in the Hall. And I said, oh, yeah, I know them. They're great. And we think you're really funny, but you're too old for MTV to be on camera. And I put my napkin on the table, and I pushed back from the table, and I said, really loud voice, Lauren, no, I'm too old for MTV. And she laughed and said, sit down. I came back and I went to Susie and I said, hey, MTV has offered me a job in LA. What do you think? And she said, okay. Earthquakes, mudslides. We'll have to live on the island of Catalina, and we'll need a helicopter. Yeah, and MTV wasn't ready to go for putting a writer on Catalina with a helicopter, so I had to pass. But at that point in my life, so I read in the Hollywood Reporter about Windmill Lane Studios in Dublin, Ireland. It's the group U2 and their manager, Paul Guinness, and they want to start the first privately owned television network in Ireland. Ireland had two stations, RTE1, Radio Telefon Éireann, and RTE2. And these were the BBC, basically, of Ireland. So they were starting a whole television network, and it was Irish. And I thought, well, if any place is the polar opposite of LA, it's got to be Dublin. So I'm sitting in the parking lot of Kroger's after I read this article in the Hollywood Reporter. And I call them. And I get, I said, who can I talk to about your new TV network? And I got this woman named Fiona. And Fiona was so helpful and so nice. And we just talked, and I explained my situation. I don't want to live in LA. I think Dublin would be so much better for our family. And she was wonderful, and she helped me. And we talked over a period of 3 months, probably weekly. And to her boss, Russ Russell, who was a producer and I believe kind of in charge of the whole, the creative end of it. So, during these conversations with Fiona, one night I had a dream, and it was just a snapshot, a frozen image of the end of a white cottage with an evergreen tree next to it. And that was it. So I break it to the wife and kids, hey, why don't we go to Ireland for spring break? Yeah, yeah. So I set up a meeting. Fiona sets me up a meeting with Russ Russell in Dublin. And we go over to Dublin. We stay in the Shelburne Hotel. And Susie had planned out a whole driving tour of Ireland. And we were going to leave the next day after one day in Dublin. And I get a cab to go to Windmill Lane Studios for my meeting. And the cab driver says, "Do you have an appointment?" I was like, "Yeah, I have a meeting." "Really? So you know the lads?" And I said, the lads? And he said, "Yeah, the lads, you too. You're going to meet with you too." And I said, "Oh no, I'm just going to meet with one of the guys with the television thing." And we talked about the TV networks. And of course, he told me what should be on the television network on my ride to Windmill Lane. But as we were going along, there was a florist named Molly Blooms. Now, as a James Joyce fan, I was very familiar with Molly Bloom. And, of course, one of my favorite quotes from Joyce was, "Watching Molly walk away was like watching two cats fighting in a bag." I'm sorry, it just stuck in my mind as a young man. So we stop at Molly Bloom's, and I buy flowers for Fiona. And this was something that I'd always done, because I knew that the administrative assistants, or secretaries, as we called them in the old days, actually ran the world. They controlled their bosses, who thought they were the decision makers. Actually, it was all about that gatekeeper. And she'd been so nice. So I get a bunch of flowers at Molly Bloom's. And as we're riding out there, there's stone walls in this old warehouse section along the river Liffey. And these were the old warehouses where the boats would unload. Great old stone buildings, not brick, stone. And on the stone walls along Windmill Lane, there's all this writing and all these different colors. And I was going, what is this, vandalism? What is this? And the driver said, no, these are messages to the lads that their fans write. And this was 1990, and U2 was new and big. And I didn't realize how big, like the Beatles big. So when we get closer and closer to the entrance to their Windmill Lane Studios, these converted warehouses, there's all these young people. And they're pressing up against the windows of the cab. "Who are you? Who are you?" And I was going, no one. Nobody here. Nothing to see. And we get through the gate and all these kids, and we go in. It's this beautiful old renovated warehouse. Beautifully done. And I go in and sit in this large area with steps going up. And this beautiful Colleen, a young Irish woman, redheaded, sitting at this very prominent desk. And I walk up to the desk with my flowers, and I say, "Yes, I'm Daniel Butler. I'm here to see Fiona at 10. And she looked at me, and she looked at the flowers, and she looked at me, and she said, "I'll be right back." And she goes up the stairs. And then she comes back down. And she said, "She'll be with you in just a moment." And then she whispered to me, because there are a couple of people in the waiting room, "You do know Fiona's getting married on Sunday." And I said, "Oh, no, I didn't know. But these were just from a friend. And we've been speaking for months from the U.S., and I just wanted to say thank you." So I stopped and got her flowers. And she goes, "Oh, thank goodness. I thought you'd come all this way to ask Fiona to marry you." Turns out Irishmen don't get their girlfriends or wives flowers often, and this was a big deal. And Fiona and I laughed, and she was just as sweet as I had imagined. And I congratulated her on her wedding. I said, "Please tell your fiancé, your husband-to-be, that I'm just a friend." And Oh, she invited us to the wedding on Sunday. She said, "You must come. Oh, you must come to the wedding. Everybody's coming." I said, "Oh, Fiona, no. I mean, it's your wedding. That's friends and family. And we're leaving tomorrow to go on a tour of the country. We'll be back in a week." And she said, "Oh, it's Sunday. You should stay the weekend." And I told Susie, and she said, "Oh, yeah, well, we've got the reservations at all these B&Bs." And so we left. And Susie was a big Bono and U2 fan. And I think it was that Monday. The wedding was on a Sunday. This was a Friday. I met with Russ for 3.5 hours. It was wonderful. And he said, "Come back. You got to come back." So a week later, we came back and we met some more. And but Fiona's wedding was in the Irish Times. And U2 was there, all the lads. And we could have gone. And then Susie got mad.